understand them. And so at this point, you still have that, right? You still have the opportunity to say, okay, yes, lots of missed opportunities, what can you do right now? And so
That's exactly why we're mediating.
Yeah.
that's where you are,
Mhm.
that's what you're doing there.
That's exactly why we signed that paper that says, yes, we'll mediate.
Yeah.
Chris? You can.
Was I next or was some?
Chris was next,
Okay.
and then Kim.
Okay.
But we want to be sure to get responses from the,
Yeah.
from the
First.
panel up here in between what the mediators have to say. Trying to be fair, folks.
I have a question that I sort of want you, I want my supervisors to sort of, be, because when you say, we don't want you to do this or do that, or we would prefer if you didn't, about empathy and stuff like that, I feel that that's kind of pushing boundaries in the opposite direction, because I know that we have boundaries that we have to be very careful about where we go and where we don't go. So I'm just curious about, how do you guys respond to their sort of saying, we don't want you to do certain things?
I'm trying to be a neutral third party here.
Okay. Okay. So we as mediators do our work, and sometimes our work works for an individual party and sometimes it doesn't. I think it's really valuable to hear these folks say, when you do this, this is the impact on me.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We're still going to make our choices, but now we're going to make more informed choices.
Sure, okay.
Right? So maybe now, honestly, hearing this, maybe now that the feedback is, we think that by being empathetic, we're going to get them closer to a payment arrangement, and their experience is that if we go really deep into an empathetic story, that we're wrong, we're not going to get closer to a payment arrangement. I'm going to start paying attention to that in my mediation, but that doesn't mean I'm going to abandon empathy. I'm just going to make more informed choices about
Yeah,
it.
and again, I wasn't approaching that from a confrontational, I was approaching it from,
Yeah.
I'm
So
curious
what
about
do you
it.
do with this
Yeah,
information? And
yeah.
that's, for me, that's what I'm hearing. I'm hearing like, this is what we wish you would do. And I also know from talking to these folks that they don't necessarily expect we're going to do everything that they want us to do. But I've been really impressed with the eagerness with which they want to share. Gosh, this is what would work for us, and this is the impact. And I think that just helps us make better informed choices.
I'd like to
Okay.
say something.
Karen?
I had a resolution conference recently, and both the facilitator, the people, quite honestly, they had tried the limits of all patience, and they were very unrealistic and paranoid and everything else. And they, the
Talk about the
facilitator.
homeowner?
Yes, the homeowner. The facilitator and the beneficiary's attorney were bending over backwards, and they were looking at me and saying, well, should we be meeting again? And I am,
Who's that?
they're my, I'm the housing counselor, I can't, throw them off the cliff, so I'm just saying, wow, I don't know. And they keep wanting to, they jumped in when all that needed to happen was the people had to let go of one unrealistic thing that they were doing. And when we could have solved the problem, well, fortunately, we gave them some time to talk, and they decided to do a short sale, and I was on my knees, thankfully.
So they saw the light.
Yeah, well, somehow, but it was not, the reason I'm saying this is, it was the facilitator I felt went way too far. Then the attorney, I wanted to take her out in the hall, but, he was not representing.
Stop being so
the
nice to my
bank.
client.
Yeah. I mean, be nice when the bank is being unreasonable, but the bank was not being unreasonable, and the facilitators just went way overboard, so I'm sympathetic with what they're talking about, that a little more neutrality and looking at the situation and realizing, these people are not not being realistic. They want the sun, the moon, and the stars.
I'm sorry, Kim.
Yeah, so a couple of things that have sort of struck me. Eric, you mentioned that you guys, or somebody said that you've really done your due diligence before you even arrive here, right? Which means you've done a lot of work to investigate about them and to understand their financial situation, hopefully, and get as much information as possible and work with them. But, you know, and I'm pretty new at this, so I don't have a ton of experience. But one of the things that I don't hear or haven't heard in the mediations is that disclosure of what you know. In situations where folks are saying, gosh, I just can't pay that, but they don't give you any information. And, you know, we're just sort of sitting there while folks are just trying to, well, this is what we can do. Whereas I'm wondering, you know, is there a decision that you guys make to not disclose information that you already know?
There's that very
Good question.
conscious decision that we make as collectors not to divulge all the information that we have about them. Because honestly, I know for myself when I come, I tell myself every time that when I come into mediation that they're here to mediate, they want this arrangement, like this will work, they're gonna be totally forthcoming with me, but I know in the back of my head they're not. You know, perfect example, I was kind of iffy as to whether the person was still working with some previous conversations that we had had prior to even coming into mediation, and so I called this particular place of employment and I said, does so-and-so still work here? And they said yes, and I said, and he's still full-time with you? Yes, he's still full-time. I can't give you any, you know, income information. Oh, that's fine, I'm not asking for income information. That's great, thanks for answering my questions. But when we came to mediation, he had been laid off, he was no longer employed, he was, you know, and so when we're asking these types of questions, we really want them to give us the information rather than for us to give them information that we've already verified for ourselves.
And a lot of times in the beginning, and Erin and I have talked about this, a lot of times if I have my file and you're reading through the opening remarks, I'll be flipping through my file. While I'm doing that, I'm not trying to be rude and I'm not reading anything in my file. I'm assessing. I'm assessing what questions they ask you. I'm assessing the way that they sit in their chair, the way they handle themselves, the way they're gonna present themselves. Because body language tells me a lot about who they are, as far as, are they really somebody who wants to pay this bill? Yeah, exactly.
I
have my fingernails done. If somebody, I know what that costs. If you come in and you have your fingernails done and your hair's,
It's true.
It is true.
Yeah.
You know, I had a lady, and who knows, but she walks in and, you know, she has a Prada purse. Now, I have no idea if it's a knockoff or not, because I have never seen a Prada purse in real life. But if you're gonna walk into a courtroom and then say, I have 4 kids at home and I'm unemployed, really?
Purse.
I mean, you know, yeah,
Or one of the
you know,
kids. Or one
I
of the
mean,
kids.
that's an exaggeration, of course, but those are things we look at. You know, are they put together?
Please,
Go ahead.
One of the other reasons I won't disclose everything is to do that, I'll have to call them a liar.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm about to shut down all communications as soon as I say, that's not true, I called right before I came here and you're working.
Mm-hmm.
So I just called them out in front of somebody, they're now embarrassed, they're now gonna shut down and be combative the rest of the communication.
And they're gonna call the client.
So do you wait till you get to court to
Kim?
bring that out? I
Go
guess?
ahead.
Exactly.
Kim, you were waiting for a
Yeah,
while.
I guess this is maybe a question for Erin too, but, and the other mediators, but I'm struggling with this empathy versus neutrality kind of thing. It seems like in every mediation, you could show empathy to either party or both of them. We had one today where, I don't think we did that, but we could have. And so it seems like if we're gonna be neutral, then you gotta be careful with that. And so, and maybe I'm not good at it anyway, so, you know, so maybe that's why I don't think about it that much, but it just seems like, if we're gonna be neutral, we don't wanna show empathy toward necessarily a lot of empathy toward either party. Because we don't want to think we're on their side.
I like that.
you
I'll
know?
go with that.
Yeah,
we'll go
Amy wants to answer.
I'd like Amy to address that too.
Well, I'm just thinking about the whole idea that this is a negotiation, and in negotiation, people walk in the room with hidden agendas, and they have the ability to share information or choose not to share information, and we as mediators have no control over that. So if we can build enough trust in the room so that there can be a little bit of transparency, and those parties feel comfortable with us and each other, then that's how they're gonna have their best dialogue. But having us appear like we're supporting one side or the other is gonna break that down right away, because one party's gonna feel defensive and resentful, you know, just to sort of characterize it. So I think the fact that we're paying attention to this piece, that we don't know everything, that these people have had a prior relationship, they may not be sharing with us everything that's going on, but we can help them have the best conversation that they can have in front of each other for this particular hour that we have them. You know, that's the best we can do. And our integrity is that, you know, we're as transparent with them as we can be, and we're hoping that we'll be able to inspire them to be as transparent as they're willing to be with one another. So we can't forget that this is a negotiation.
And I would think if just listening to the one party and saying, here's what I heard you say, and repeating it, then that goes a long way toward, at least they know you're hearing them. And, you know, you can do that, and that may sound empathetic to them, but you're just really just making sure you understand what they said.
Hold on just a second. Aaron, you haven't had anything to say.
Yeah, I guess what I'd like to add to this conversation is that the empathy goes both ways. I mean, for me, empathy and neutrality aren't exclusive to each other, but that the equality of how both parties are treated at the table is what's really important. And I found, I haven't done a ton of credit cases, but what I find so helpful in having you guys here and talking about your work is that the empathy has to go both ways, that the other party needs to understand what your company, how it works, what you guys need, how much money you've invested. Like they need their understanding of that business, the business piece, and that you're that you're just a human, and B, that you have a job to do, and that this company needs to get its debt paid, and you know, that is as important as them being heard and, you know, being able to express the difficulty that they're experiencing, or the pain, or I think it goes on both sides.
Yeah.
Any response over there?
Well, I agree to that, but again, it's like we've all said, before it ever gets to this part, they're already shown very much empathy from our system. We have on our collector floor the letters PhD. And our owner and founder, Michael Schindler, believes that everybody in our office has a PhD, because that means preserve human dignity. That is the motto that we work with. That's the motto with the collectors work with, because everybody has the opportunity, well, opportunity is not the right word, misfortune to be in this position. Me, our collectors, Michael himself, could have a debt that got misplaced, got missed. Nobody's immune to it, you know. It's like Karen has shared, you know, people find themselves in these situations. So we've been empathetic to them throughout the whole thing. We've rebuilt their insurance, and they can show us that insurance wasn't billed. We'll call the client and say, hey, was this billed? You know, can we take a look at this? Can we see if this was billed? So it's not just the empathy that we have to deal with the mediation, but it's the empathy that we've dealt with through the whole thing. And I particularly, I don't know about you guys, but Jim said something about when they attack a certain collector. You know, I know for a fact, in fact, the last mediation I had here in Clackamas, the defendant attacked the collector profusely, and the mediator isn't here tonight, but she let it continue to where I was almost offended because of the company that I represent, and I know for a fact that that person would not have done what this person said that he had done. So it did become, at that point, I had to kind of pull myself back and say, stop being personal. Let this go, because it did. Again, I'm probably the most emotional person on this panel, but it is something that we've shown throughout. It's not just in the mediation process. It's not just today that, you know, we want you guys to shut down your emotions because we have to shut down
I
ours.
think that's one of the biggest
It's-
pieces I'm picking up here.
Yeah.
Is that,
Chris, you just jumped right in.
You got two people in front of you, Chris.
So,
I
Hold on,
just
let
so
it
yeah, I
finish.
mean, that's a process that's gone through, and I'm sure everybody here can say the same thing. Because again, we're human, we're gonna show empathy, we're gonna do our best that all our dots are dotted and our T's are crossed and everything is done and everything is perfect because I won't go in front of a judge unless I can win.
I won't
Point
go in front of a
blank.
judge and be ringed by a judge because my paperwork's out of whack.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we will not forego a mediation to lose. We want to mediate, we want to understand where it's coming from. But like we've said with the empathy, it gets it clear going off this way, and then we have to bring it back. And then we're the hard ones that look all, and it's extremely hard for me. It's extremely hard, and I've mediated with several of you. It's extremely hard for me. You can hear in my voice, because it matters. It matters. We are people. We want to help them. That's the number one thing I think for mediation is the empathy part, and it's the hardest thing I deal with because these people matter. If they didn't, we wouldn't be here. We would just say, you know what, follow your answer, and I'm not gonna mediate. I'm not paying $50 to resolution services to sit in a room with you. Screw that. I'll go down and get a judgment. We could do that. We have the legal right to say no, just as they do. Why we are here and pay that extra money out of our company's pockets, because we don't pay it, we're here because we want to be empathetic and share what they need to make this a valuable debt to them. And I say valuable debt because rent and a mortgage is the number one. Your car payment, whether it be $800 or it's a paid off car, is number two, because you still got insurance. It's trying to make it a valuable debt, and that's why I keep the payment short. I need it to be a
guess if I could
valuable debt to pay.
just to clarify, I guess the point I wanted to make was that I think a job that we could do as mediators is to help both sides understand each other. You understand their story. They might not understand, A, that you're a person, and B, that you guys have put a lot of work, that you have a reason that you need this money paid. You're not this big awful, that maybe they've decided something about your company or about you that isn't fair, and being able to help them see you as people with empathy who, want to work with them, I think can make a big difference for the other. And that's part of, I think, the two-way street, is making sure that you guys are understood for what you need to have out of the process.
And I think that that's what we're trying to get to,
Yeah.
is that you all see their empathetic side, but we need you to kind of pull it this way too and say, we are people, and there's a reason for this.
Okay, so from our side, we got Chris, we got Laura, we got Ruth.
Thanks, sorry.
No, that's all right.
Come on, you guys, help me out there.
So you had a thing going there, and I want you to finish, so you want to continue
Yes.
on this line?
I think what you said was really a salient point, that we don't have to do this. And I think I never really thought about that. So that's a valuable piece of information. But I think the empathy thing, it's really interesting because there's such a fine line between empathy and sympathy. And it's so, it's so fine. A friend of mine was asking me to define the difference between the two. And it took a long time for me to be able to explain it clearly. And I think it's really important to really know the difference, because you can't be sympathetic in mediation. Because if you are, then you're taking that person's, you're not doing it intentionally, but then you take that person's side. And when you're empathetic, you're not putting yourself into it. You're just trying to say, I understand what you say, I don't have to agree with you, but I'm trying to understand what you're saying. And I think there's a big difference, but the line is so fine that that's where we have to be really careful. Because once you become sympathetic, it's done. It's done. You know?
Okay, well, mine's a little bit off,
Oh,
so.
okay, does anybody else wanna continue along this theme? Ruth? Aaron?
Yeah. Can I respond to Chris? Okay, so I'll keep it short. The thing to me that I think might be the line, I'll be really interested in your response to this, is when I'm empathetic with somebody and in this kind of situation, what I want to focus on is you've had all of these feelings and emotions, and that's what makes the decision in front of you hard. And we're here about the decision, and all of these things are impacting this decision. And a line I use a lot is, you've got to choose between a few bad options, and I want to make sure you don't choose the worst of the bad options. I want to help you get to the best of the bad options. But I get that, they're bad options for you. I think, to me, that's where empathy is effective. Like, I hear where you're coming from, and yet you still have to do this work.
Yep.
And where I'm hearing is, if you let them go too far down and then you get the sad puppy dog eyes and you go, well, hey, collection agent, didn't you hear this sad, sad story? Like, certainly it's a sad, sad story. Like, that, I'm hearing that that's hard to come back from the brink of. So it's about, to me, the purpose, using empathy purposefully to focus on the case at hand. Sorry, that was longer than I meant to be.
Response?
sorry, I was just-
Response over here. I wanna get a response from Aaron and then.
Well, I
want to respond.
I agree with that. I mean, we can all empathize, okay, with the people, but you can't let it go too far, okay? Empathy, I think, is understanding, okay? And, and we try to understand their situation also. Ours has to be tempered by trying to get the money paid for our client, because that's why we're in business, okay? But, we understand their situation, okay? But
Somebody else.
if they weren't in here, they have to pay those payments anyway, or they'd be in here, okay?
Follow that logic.
I guess I would be reluctant to say to somebody, I understand you have a choice between a lot of bad options, because I really don't know their situation, and there may be an option there that's not bad for them. And so, if you don't know, I wouldn't want to put, maybe, there are a lot of options here for you, but I would not make a judgment on whether they're all bad. Because
I think the hardest thing that,
they can tell me they're all bad, then maybe I would understand that.
I think that's why as collection agencies, I know for myself and the other people who come, is that's why we try to delve into what their situation is. So I know that for me, when I come in, I'm gonna tell you why we're here, how much it is, why it's how much it is, can you pay it in full, and if not, let me try to figure out how to get some payments for you. The problem comes in, at least from what I'm hearing from the people who come, because I haven't been for a little while, I never had a problem, but is that when we start to get into those types of questions, like where are you working, how much are you bringing home, well, is that really relevant, well, why do you have to know that? Well, why, and it's not just, if the mediator's questioning why we're asking that, then they're gonna start questioning why we're asking that. And the reason why we're asking that is because we need to know what your financial situation is in order to make you a plan that's not gonna set you up for failure. And without having the information, I might as well close my book and say we're done, and just call it that, because.
But it's not our job to know to care about that. We shouldn't care about.
Right, but it is my job to care
No,
about
I know,
that,
but
and I
I'm saying,
can't
but we
get
shouldn't.
to the end result without
Yeah.
knowing that.
We should
But
say
I've also
why.
had
Yeah,
someone.
and-
Gary?
Well, and I've been with you a couple of times. You bring an incredible amount of humanity into the mediation. Marty, I've seen you get choked up, and not directed by me or what have you, trying to get you choked up, but you actually feel it. And that goes along with Jim. We had the big 10-hour thing. The defendant missed the reconvene. And Jim could have just gotten a judgment and walked out the door. He let him come back again. So that kind of stuff goes a long way. So that humanity, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. And there's a way that certain collectors are off-putting at things, but you guys aren't that way. You want to draw this out and figure it out. So for me, that's what works. And the empathy, you're already doing it. And we were already walking down the empathy road, because the first thing I say is, this isn't just a defendant or a plaintiff, this isn't just a collection agency, this is Marty or Jim or Mary. And so you already opened that door, you need to do that so you're not just looked at as the big bad guy. So, you got to take a little bit of that with it, it's just gotta happen, you know.
I was just gonna say in response to what you said about that you need that information, and I think we probably all know that you need that information, but I've also had collectors at the very beginning, first thing out of their mouth is, I need to have this information or we can't do anything for you today. And instead of starting out, you know,
Absolutely.
I mean, that's like, to me, that's like, I'm totally closed off at that moment, and not for me, but I imagine
No,
the
that's fine.
client.
We agree.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, we agree.
Yeah.
I think that there's a way that you're,
I don't even ask that information because my collector should have that information for me before I walk out the door.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
Yeah, but I've been in a couple mediations where the collectors didn't feel like they had that information, up front, and I think we.
Yeah, no
you
folks
know,
didn't
for
get an agreement
asset,
either,
I mean,
did they?
for
No,
asset,
and it's
they
a
might-
calculator right away.
You guys might not
Yeah.
ask for it, but it's our company policy to ask for it. And we
Yeah,
update, we update files when they call. I mean, almost every
Yeah.
single time we have contact with somebody, we update. Is your address still current? Are you still here? Do you know, are you
But-
still whatever?
Yeah.
But yeah.
But I'm not a collector. okay?
Yeah,
I'm simply court representative.
yeah. And for
So-
most of
Don't
them,
you
they've been
guys-
great, but I have had, just a couple of those, and it was just like, oh, could I just pull you aside and could you just say it a little differently next
I'm
time?
even-
And they're not effective, are they?
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Usually they give it
You
up.
know,
Yeah,
so-
I weave it into the conversation.
Yeah.
I
So
mean,
do
in
I.
order to get your future billings or any
that's
notices, your address
fabulous.
is.
Yeah.
Okay, you wanna come up with $50, you're working full-time, where's that at?
Yeah,
Okay, it's part of the conversation, it's part of the negotiation.
yeah.
I can't imagine someone, that's
Yeah.
horrible.
Yeah, they wouldn't be working for us.
Yeah, it's off-putting.
Yeah.
You're not gonna get a mediation like that at all.
So,
Never easy.
maybe just one or two more words on this line of thought, and I know if we've
Something
got some
different.
other people who wanna ask other different questions. Does anybody wanna continue this line of thought? So. Really quickly.
Anybody
Chris.
decides to.
Really sorry.
Gotta love
One thing that I know is that there's some big gaps in between what you do and what we do. And that's kind of the elephant in the room. I've done a lot of negotiating and now I'm doing mediation, and I know that what you need out of the deal is different than what we're really trained to provide. So, it's our position initially, it's not about empathy, it's about hearing. It's about hearing what they're saying, and we've been taught to reiterate that back to them and then make the situation elevate to a better place. So that's what we're doing. I think the real problem is that when and I've heard this as well, when one of us gets in the room and we say, well, why don't you just do this? Or, we start telling your person that you're suing what they should get from you, like the interest or the payment or that is really the crux of what we do wrong, is anytime that comes up that we interject what the solution should be.
Oh.
So I've seen that, and I know that that's really the part we do wrong. Some people, sometimes.
Okay, Jerry, listen.
I actually had an experience in Clackamas County years ago, that we had the arrangement, and he said, are you sure you wanna pay the interest?
Yeah.
And she then said, well, no, why should I? I don't think I'm gonna do this.
Mediators, we get going on a much longer path than you guys do. And so a mediator, first of all, we're blind to what you're coming in with. None of us know the history of what you've already done with this person, so we don't know that you've already exhausted all your avenues. We think this is maybe the first time you've ever talked to them, according to them. So we go through our whole process of, vexing and finding out, what their interests are and all of that, like we're taught to do, but that doesn't necessarily
Well,
put things in the best hands for you guys to do what you have to do.
I asked for a caucus after he said that. And I told him, yes, I will go ahead and reduce the interest this time. Keep in mind though, if I had said no, you were the one forcing this to trial. We were done, we were negotiated.
Yeah.
And the mediator actually
Yeah,
was
that was,
pushing it to
that
trial.
was,
That's the
Because
defense of that, yeah.
I win.
Well, it's like we have to exercise what we do almost sometimes.
Yeah, but
We
that
shouldn't do that in
seems- that
any
shouldn't
mediation, I don't
seem
think,
like-
not even, not.
It's not our job to come
Yeah,
up
we-
with options.
Okay, so Laura, I'm gonna give you the floor,
Was it,
yeah.
was it this, was it
Right
within
as this building
program?
opened,
Was it within this program or something
Yes.
else?
I think I remember that case, and I think we had a conversation with that mediator about that issue, and I'm pretty sure I know who it is, and we let, and right, we take volunteer mediators, and mediators have.
You get what you pay.
Damn it, you people!
You get what you pay for, you know what I'm saying?
Be careful.
We take mediators who are, it's not their volunteer status, I make mistakes too, but we take mediators who are just out of their mediation training and who are on a learning curve. And we know that both our beginning mediators and our experienced mediators will make mistakes. You know what? I think they'll make mistakes too in certain cases.
I think
And I think this panel knows when one of our volunteers makes a mistake, I think I've gotten calls from all of your offices. And what you guys get to know is when I get a call from their office about you, you're gonna hear from us,
It comes
and
back
you're gonna know what that feedback was, and we're gonna work on it. So like
Well, yeah. I should-
that learning
I should-
loop we've got
I
covered.
should mention the bumper sticker I have, it says mediators for people too.
Okay, Laura.
Okay, so we've heard a lot about things we shouldn't do, but you all have been in enough mediations to have some idea of the facilitating techniques that we use that are effective, and that's what I'd like to hear.
I was just gonna say something about that too. I was just gonna say, I mean, most of, how'd you know?
She's very
A lot of the
empathetic.
mediators, I've had a lot of the mediators that are in this room, and I think that just over time, they just kind of learn your style, and they just kind of learn what works best for you. And a lot of times when you're dealing with collection agencies, we don't need as much prodding to get to where we need to go as like John and Jane Smith need to get to where they need to go. Most of us have been doing it for years, and we've trained people underneath us who come and, we monitor them and we, mentor them and things like that. So generally speaking, what works best for me is if I can give my opening introductory, they can tell me whatever they need to do, and if I ask them, do you want a payment arrangement, and they say yes, you just let me be.
Right, yeah.
Because
You would like to
give,
go first. before-
Always.
we always go
Always
first.
wanna go
Well,
first.
she doesn't mean before our introduction.
no.
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 Yeah, you're not escaping
You have to-
introduction.
you have
We
to-
don't escape the introduction. I asked one time if I had to.
Introduction is
Right,
being said, though,
yeah.
like I said.
Yeah, a lot of stuff does go
happening.
on, and I'm like Marty, and I do look at my file. I do
Yeah,
flip
me
through
too.
while you're going through things, and it's not that I'm trying to be rude or I don't care what you have to say. It's just I'm kind of just refreshing, like,
When you
is the
have,
right person in the room? Is the, does it look like, all of my
Yeah.
ducks are in a row? But if it seems like it's moving in the right direction and all of the wheels are
Right.
turning and everything's going correctly and everything's going right, like, just let it happen.
Well, I think what we're trained to do is get the two parties to start talking, and it's stuck.
Step out.
Shouldn't-
And
should
if you
jump
guys
in,
are
but
talking,
I
we
agree with
can,
you.
I'd just assume not.
But
Yeah.
I've
We
had
like to sit there and
mediators
listen.
who, as I'm talking and I'm like, okay, great, and I'm like right there and I'm ready and I'm like, okay, this is, and when do you wanna start your payment arraignment? Wait,
Wait, I don't understand.
I don't understand.
Yeah.
Why are you asking him to pay that much? And why are you making him start this month? And I'm like, I was there. I was
just
like
wanna go,
10 minutes from the door.
I guess.
and that's important.
We have
I've been doing
computers
this for
now,
about
it's
10
20
years
minutes.
too, and I gotta say, if the other side does have a grievance they wanna get out,
Sure.
I'll be patient, as long as it's not personally directed to me, they can get it out. As long as it's a reasonable time, and the mediator feels like they can stop it and say, okay, I understand, I hear what you've said, now let's see if we can get it back to what we're here about today. And just bring the conversation back to where it needs to be, because really it's about money. And we need to get away from that part and back to it. And I like it when a mediator will gently bring the conversation back.
Yeah.
I'm gonna add to Derek's comment on that, because as I was saying how, just last week, Erin, it was just last week, and neither one of the mediators are here tonight. which is a good thing but a bad thing, because I really wish they were. They did a fabulous job, even though, like I said, I had to kind of take myself out because he was totally going off on one of my collectors, who I know personally. And I got kind of offensive with that and had to lock myself back out. But she handled it, and that's why I was trying to say, handle it with them, and I think that's what Derek's kind of saying. We'll be patient, handle it with them, as long as it doesn't bring us into the picture. And I think that's a good key that I was trying to make earlier, is go ahead and talk to them. As long as it doesn't become personally attacked on me or the company or one of our representatives, then I can stay neutral in it and let you talk to them. Because sometimes it is just that, to bring, it will go full circle, and they'll end up back where they need to be. So it is a difficult thing, like you guys are saying, the empathy and the neutrality. It is very difficult for you. It's difficult for us because sometimes that does work. It works that day.
Right. And one of the ways I end that, I can hear every call in our company.
Mm-hmm.
I have the ability to go listen to the phone call, and I'll tell them, I'll look into that. Now let's, you know.
Chris?
Part of our responsibility is, and that's what we always do at the beginning during the introduction, is to establish sort of a framework of, you know, not behavior, but if people start going beyond a place, I mean, I always, you know, kind of put a stop to it, so that's kind of important. So if that didn't happen.
Certainly if it's the second time they're saying it.
Well, I mean, regardless, but I mean, that's very important because there are boundaries, you know, there have to be boundaries, so I think that's something that,
I think your caucus is a wonderful tool,
Yeah.
okay?
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah.
We don't.
And it's, there have been a lot of resolutions.
I think caucuses are great.
Yeah, I do too. And one example was when my boss was still doing it. Okay. There was the debtor standing up at the table looking like, and yelling at him.
Yeah.
And the mediator goes, why don't we do a caucus? Okay? So he tells my boss to go out in the hallway, okay? And the mediator comes back 5 minutes later and says, I want to call this a failed mediation, because if you go back in there, he's going to hurt you. So it's a very effective tool, and most of the time after a caucus, we've come to an agreement like that within the next couple, 3 minutes. Okay? Yeah.
Yeah, we usually try and.
So Brian, did you have something that you wanted to?
I was curious first I just want to make a comment and just kind of went back to something else, is how, I guess when I first started doing this, how willing I always found everybody to do the additional legwork, to like look up information, to go back for a client, to talk to your clients, to do what needed to be done on behalf of, you know, getting a resolution and getting the information for the debtor to go. And that's always been so helpful, and I just really, really appreciate that. And then Marty, I just kind of had a question. In the situation that you're talking about, my tendency may have been in that situation to really give you the opportunity to address that. I mean, you know, if you have somebody that's really making you feel, you know, kind of uncomfortable about the work, you know, and maybe unfairly that your company is doing, and give you the opportunity maybe to address, you know, how, you know, that makes you feel and how helpful that would be. And I'm just curious what your response would be in a situation like that.
I wouldn't have wanted to go into that.
Okay.
That would have just made me vulnerable.
Okay.
And I was already trying to shut down to back out of that. To bring me further into it would have been volatile. What could have happened is a caucus at that time to take me completely out of the situation. And as I just said, caucuses are great because it allows them to talk to a neutral party, not the devil, but a neutral party.
Well, and I guess my thinking on that is to give them the opportunity to see that you're actually a person that works for a real company. I mean, to give you the opportunity to humanize. And that was kind of my question about empathy to begin with. To kind
This
of.
person wouldn't have cared.
Okay.
Yeah, it was the mediators that did it, and I'm sorry I don't know their names, but they handled it well. They did. They were able to rein her back in and get a mediated agreement, which I was thankful for, because she was in a bad position to have had a judgment. Would I have won in court? Absolutely, without question. But that's not the purpose of mediation. We want to work with our debtors to try to come to a resolve.
Sure.
And it ended up resolving very well. But it was one of the most difficult mediations I've had in a long time. Going back to one of the things that Jim had said about mediators and caucuses too is attorneys. And I know some of you are attorneys. But they are difficult to mediate with. Y'all are. Y'all attorneys are difficult to mediate with.
Not all.
Not
Everyone I have mediated. I don't know which ones of you are.
Right.
I
Then how do you know?
Experience
You mean
with them.
when
But you
when
are
the
so
attorney-
much fun to go to court with.
Yes.
You are so much fun to go to court with.
Oh,
You meant
in
if you meant-
response to that.
So how do you know? How do you know? How do you know?
How do you know?
Do we say, I'm an attorney? I mean,
No.
I'm just curious how you know.
Some
We
people
know
do.
We know before we get there, and sometimes I can tell.
Are you talking about the attorney being the
The
individual
mediator?
you're
Attorney
suing,
mediator.
or
The
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 mediator?
mediator or the debtor.
Either one,
Tough
okay.
to both.
So you just,
Yeah.
any attorney in the room is a problem.
Okay.
It's fun in the court.
I know,
Yeah.
I'm feeling
Try to cut
attacked
to
here
the
at this point. I'm taking it
I've
personally.
actually.
Now I want you to name the attorney,
I
because
know,
I,
You want me
sorry.
to guess the attorneys in this room?
Yeah.
I-
do it.
but because,
Absolutely.
and here's why, because I have, and I'm transparent about this, I've told my attorney mediators, there are attorneys who are attorney mediators, and I also have attorneys who are mediators who don't mediate like attorneys. So I know what you're saying, and for attorney mediators, but I wonder whether you can spot the sneaky attorney mediators who don't mediate like attorneys. I'm not gonna get what I want.
Is
But.
this the game show part?
Right.
Yeah. Is there prizes?
What's my line?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, I know that you're an attorney, so you're one. Okay, Jim,
Sure,
or,
yeah.
Gary is not.
Correct.
I'm not sure.
Well, you know he is.
I would
He
say
is.
yes, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I'm gonna say you, yes. You are, you gave it away. And
I did, I already gave it away.
Am I
Pretty
right?
good.
Am I right?
100%.
Am I?
So, hold on,
How am I
Ruth,
supposed to feel about all this?
Just laugh, just laugh, it's good.
It's not a bad thing.
It's
Not a
not.
bad thing.
okay.
It's just
You wanna say
notable.
anything?
It's notable.
Okay.
I've been doing this
I
for
tried
50
really
years.
hard to.
Well, I am an attorney and you didn't.
I
No,
didn't.
I'm just kidding.
So Ruth, I know that
I think
you haven't
No, so-
talked for a while. Ruth, do you wanna say something?
I'm not an attorney.
Actually, David, I'm sorry. Can I interrupt?
Sorry.
Can I ask Marty to follow up on what about attorney mediators is challenging? What feedback would you give to
As
attorney
mediators
mediators?
or debtors?
As mediators.
Mediators.
As
They're
mediators.
responsible for their own debts, but as mediators,
Well, that's that question.
I don't find it challenging. I think attorney mediators, fabulous. Because you guys know the laws more. You know how to, you deal with your own clients, so you're better inept to keep it on track, not delve too much into the feelings. Can do it a little bit, but you don't jump in, and typically you keep them reined in a lot better.
You don't stroll down the yellow.
I find that
Yeah.
you concentrate a lot on the particulars of the case.
Yes.
Facts.
Facts.
Yes,
Facts.
you
Yeah.
dig into the facts, I
Keep-
wanna
keep the
understand
numbers.
this, so that I can help them understand this.
Mhm.
And so we spend a lot more time at the beginning, giving our opening.
Giving
So that you.
Right, giving facts. I would say you're better.
Yeah.
Sorry for those that aren't.
We know Brian loves the board.
We love you. We love you all.
Ruth still has the floor unless, Amy, do you wanna speak to that particular?
Well, I just wanted to say quickly, and maybe I'm a little off track, but what I'm assuming is that you're okay if mediators get lost in the weeds a little bit with the people who are owing the money, if it serves the end of getting a good agreement.
Absolutely.
We don't want you to go to Oz with them. But you could go to like the flower field with them,
Yellowbrook
Go
Road.
ahead.
as long
Pick
as
up
you
the
come back.
scarecrow.
Right, right.
That's fine.
Pick up the scarecrow.
Yeah. You can get the scarecrow, but then come back.
Don't fall asleep in the poppy field.
Right.
And don't say what the agreement
Oh, I got a
should
brain.
be.
Right.
Yeah. As long as we
How
just
about
keep
if
it
you do
moving.
this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because in Lake County, we have the opportunity to mediate without mediators, but if a mediator is available, you now have to mediate. And you can only mediate till noon, because at 1:30 your trial begins.
Oh, wow.
See, and
say
in
that-
Washington County, they have a mediation program in Washington County, but I will tell you that we
Yeah.
as collectors never get a mediator.
Yeah.
Not one of us gets a mediator. So if we go to Washington County, we're really
Just negotiating.
just
your own.
okay to just kind of, and it generally stays about the same, openings.
Yeah.
Are you
Give us the
disputing any
paperwork.
portion of the bill? No,
We'll
you're
get it
not.
done.
Here's your paperwork. Do you have questions about the paperwork? Okay, you don't. Okay, are you looking for a payment plan? Okay, you are. Great. Let's,
So it used
You
to be
know.
here,
So-
night court with
so
pretrial
should we-
conferences.
The negative to that though, I'm gonna post you guys back up here.
Yeah.
The
Yeah,
negative to that
Give up.
is that I've had debtors come back and say, well, I was coerced into that.
Right.
yeah,
Oh,
that's true.
Because there wasn't a mediator involved.
on the
So
eve
I
of trial.
prefer,
Yeah.
I prefer to have a mediator.
You're looking at a very uneven power balance there. You guys, basically you owe us this money, and if you don't pay me, we're gonna get a judgment against you.
Right.
So mediator's important to balance that out. And that's the
I do
beauty of the
prefer
opening statement, so that at least they know what's happening what the process is all about.
I can go either way.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does, it depends on the case, obviously, everything
Right.
depends on the case. But I've had a couple come back from Washington County where I think if I had a mediator, it would have been.
I have one right now that's biting me, but
Mhm.
for the most part, I try to keep it kind of, I mean, just,
Yeah.
So Ruth, do you still have a question?
It's no question. I
A
have,
statement.
have been wanting to say that what's been most helpful for me tonight is to hear all of the work that you've done before you come to
Yes, me
mediation.
too.
Oh.
I really wasn't aware of that. And so, so that will help me, it'll help us to just stay focused on the issue. Because we know you've done a ton of groundwork.
And we
So-
didn't really know that. I mean,
Yeah.
Aaron?
kind of, but you know.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know that I completely realized that until tonight, so that's really helpful information. And I apologize if this was addressed before I got here, I was a little late, but, my follow-up question to that is just about your staffing. Are there people with the people that just go to mediations and go to court, and are they different from the people who've been, or do you get assigned to a case and a person and you work with that person the whole way? Or is it both? Or
I think it's different for all collection agencies.
Yeah.
I'll address my collection agency and then you guys can,
Go
we
ahead.
have, 3 levels of collectors at our collection agency. We have a frontline group, a backline group, and an auditing group. Our frontline group deals strictly with, like the accounts that are 60 days to 120 days in our office. So after validation period, and they collect only people who are calling in and want to set something up, so they collect with those. After a certain period of time, those accounts get moved to our backline unit, and our backline either, if it's readily available for them to sue on, they will. If they won't, they make the final phone calls, things like that. And then we have our legal group who does nothing but prepare accounts for suit. So it depends on what aspect your account's in our office, but once our auditor makes the decision to file the small claims, then that account stays with that auditor until it's finished. So and then we have people who come and go to court. So I work as an auditor and I also work as a court representative, so I could technically come and meet one of my debtors. Usually I won't take them, just because I don't use an alias at work. So usually I won't take my own cases, I'll let somebody else take them, because I don't use an alias at work, and then they'll see my face and be like, oh, and then I get to call you, and then I see him at Walmart, and then it's awkward. So, I generally won't, but once we decide to file, it's happened.
I know.
I went to Walmart and guy who runs security there, every time he sees me, he's like, and I'm just like,
I'd like you to meet my kids.
I stopped going to a Walmart because it seemed like I ran into a lot of people that, just in that one area, and so I was like, I'm not going to that Walmart anymore.
Somebody else want to address
Well-
different policies in your?
Ours is a little bit different. We have units on our collection floor. As the accounts come in, they're assigned units. There's 2 people to a unit. If one person is unsuccessful, it goes to the next person and we'll round robin out to the next unit if they're unsuccessful. For about a 6 months to a year timeline, depending on where the success fails. Goes to the legal department. We have 3 ladies in the legal department that review those for filing. I am not a collector, but I am on the phone and I do use an alias in the office. I generally just take legal payments. I use an alias. I do not want my defendants in a mediation to know that they've talked to me before. I am an unknown. I am strictly, my position in our office is a small claims litigation specialist. I am not a collector. I am not a legal clerk. And I've got that because I'm the only one that does it. So everybody else in the legal department talks on the phone, they set up payment arrangements, they deal with debtors. Typically, I'm not in the office. People ask for my business